2 more weeks to go. 2 more weeks to go, and we're going to be taking this up as at a closure. So yes, let's start. Who would like to read? Please start, raise your hand. And so you can have week 10 on Artist's Way. Sanya, yes, of course. All right, so let's start this beautiful chapter, this week 10, with a beautiful beginning. Now here we are going to be recovering ourselves. We are going to be recovering our sense of self-protection. So what happens is all of us need some protection and we just feel we need it. We need to protect ourselves, and that is very, very, very important. So you're recovering from it, recovering for it, recovering with it. Week 10. This week, we explore the perils that can ambush us on our creative path. Because creativity is a spiritual issue. Many of the perils are spiritual perils. In the essays, tasks, and exercises of this week, we search out the toxic patterns as we cling to that block our creative flow. Dangers of the trail. Let's read the section.
Dangers of the trail. Creativity is God energy flowing through us, shaped by us, like light flowing through a crystal prism. When we are clear about who we are and what we are doing, the energy flows freely and we experience no strain. When we resist what that energy might show us or where it might take us, we often experience a shaky, out of control feeling. We want to shut down the flow and regain our sense of control. We slam on the psychic brakes. Every creative person has myriad ways to block creativity. Each of us favors one or two ways particularly toxic to us because they block us so effectively. For some people, food is a creativity issue. Eating sugar or fats or certain carbohydrates may leave them feeling dull, hangover, unable to focus, blurry. They use food to block energy and change. As the shaky feeling comes over them,
Let's turn the page around. Yes, thanks.
That they are going too fast, and God knows where, that they are about to fly apart, these people reach for food. A big bowl of ice cream, an evening of junk food, and their system clogs. What was I thinking? What? Oh, never mind.
So we've read about this in the Luke Cotino book, that when we are feeling inadequate, when we feel there's emptiness which we can't understand, many of us reach out for the fridges, refrigerators, or for the almiras where we stock some food and namkeens and nashta. And then we feel even more sluggish, we feel even more depleted of energy, because that sugar rush is going to make you crave more and more and more, and it's going to be an endless thing. So, and then you'll think, oh, why did I do it? I'm not even feeling good about it, yet I'm eating. Oh, never mind. So what are we doing? We're just closing our mind to that feeling that we needed to eat. Claudia Black says, saying no one can be the ultimate self-care. So if you say no to that food that time, or the need to eat or the need to do something, is the most important ultimate self-care fact. So when your mind says, go, let's fish and eat, ask yourself the question, am I really hungry? Do I really want to eat, or am I okay? So very, very important for that. Yes, let's continue. So you have to make Sanya the co-host, please.
Okay. For some people, alcohol is a favored block. For others, drugs. For many, work is the block of choice. Busy, busy, busy. They grab for tasks to numb themselves with. They can't take a half hour's walk. What a waste of time. Must-dos and multiple projects are drawn to them like flies to a soda can in the sun. They go buzz, 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 swat. As they brush aside the stray thought that was the breakthrough insight. For others, an obsession with painful love places creative choices outside their hands. Reaching for the painful thought, they become instant victims rather than feel their own considerable power. If only he or she would just love me. This obsessive thought drowns out the little voice that suggests rearranging the living room, taking a pottery class, trying a new top on that story that's stymied. The minute a creative thought raises its head, it is locked off by the obsession, which blocks fear and prevents risk. Going out dancing, redoing the whole play with an inner city theme. If only he or she would love me. So much for West Side Story. Sex is a great block for many. A mesmerizing, titillating, hypnotic, interest slides novel, erotic possibilities in front of the real novel. The new sex object becomes the focus for creative approaches. Now, note carefully that food, work, and sex are all good in themselves. It is the abuse of them that makes them creativity issues. Knowing yourself as an artist means acknowledging which of these you abuse when you want to block yourself. If creativity is like a burst of the universe's breath through the straw that is each of us, we pinch that straw whenever we pick up one of our blocks. We shut down our flow, and we do it on purpose. We begin to sense our real potential and the wide range of possibilities open to us that scares us. So we all reach for blocks to slow our growth. If we are honest with ourselves, we all know which blocks are the toxic ones for us. Clue: this is the block we defend as our right.
Very important to understand what kind of blocks do I have. Do I have excess binge eating blocks, binge watching blocks, binge thinking blocks? What do I have? If I have something, I have to wonder and I have to understand that it's very toxic for me because I'm not being honest with myself. I'm just allowing some insecurity to block me and defend my right to grow and learn and leap and with joy. So very important to understand where are we going. Yes, let's continue.
Line up the possibilities. Which one makes you angry to even think about giving up? That explosive one is the one that has caused you the most derailment. Examine it. When asked to name our poison, most of us can. Has food sabotaged me? Has workaholism sabotaged me? Has sex or love obsession blocked my creativity? Mix and match is a common recipe for using blocks. Use one, add another, mix in a third, wear yourself out. The object of all of this blocking is to alleviate fear. We turn to our drug of choice to block our creativity whenever we experience the anxiety of our inner emptiness. It is always fear, often disguised, but always there, that leads us into grabbing for a block. Usually, we experience the choice to block as a coincidence. She happened to call. I felt hungry and there was some ice cream. He dropped by with some killer dope. The choice to block always works in the short run and fails in the long run. The choice to block is a creative U-turn. We turn back on ourselves. Later, like water forced to a standstill, we turn stagnant. The self-honesty lurking in us always knows when we choose against our greater good. It marks a little jot on our spiritual blackboard. Did it again. It takes grace and courage to admit and surrender our blocking devices. Who wants to? Not while they're still working. Of course, long after they have stopped working, we hope against hope that this time they will work again. Blocking is essentially an issue of faith. Rather than trust our intuition, our talent, our skill, our desire, we fear where our Creator is taking us with this creativity. Rather than paint, write, dance, audition, and see where it takes us, we pick up a block. Blocked, we know who and what we are, unhappy people. Unblocked, we may be something much more threatening, happy. For most of us, happy is terrifying, unfamiliar, out of control, too risky. Is it any wonder we take temporary U-turns? As we become aware of our blocking devices, food, busyness, alcohol, sex, other drugs, you can feel our we can feel our U-turn as we make them. The blocks will no longer work effectively. Over time, we will try, perhaps slowly at first and erratically,
Let's turn the page, sir.
to ride out the anxiety and see where we emerge. Anxiety is fuel. We can use it to write with, paint with, work with. Feel anxious. Try using the anxiety. Feel, I just did it. I didn't block. I used the anxiety and moved ahead. Oh my God, I'm excited.
Yes, so the very beautiful learning from this chapter is that all of us do go through fear. We definitely hold on to some thoughts, and whatever, if you're thinking if there is a main challenge, that is what we're supposed to surmount. But having said that, let's simply start. If you're feeling anxious, firstly, acknowledge it. Secondly, try using the anxiety, what makes you happy. Feel that feeling, try that feeling, and then you say, oh, wow, hooray, I'm free. I'm so much more better. Celebration also has to be done because that will give power to your feel good muscle. Remember, we're activating our muscles in our body. Albert Einstein says, in the middle of difficulty lies opportunity. So when there's a lot of difficulty going on, somewhere in the middle, we'll find something which is opening its doors for all of us. Now let's talk about workaholism. Yes, please, let's read.
Workaholism. Workaholism is an addiction, and like all addictions, it blocks creative energy. In fact, it could be argued that the desire to block the fierce flow of creative energy is an underlying reason for addiction. If people are too busy to write morning pages or too busy to take an artist date, they are probably too busy to hear the voice of authentic creative urges. To return to the concept of a radio set, the workaholic jams the signals with self induced static. Only recently recognized as an addiction, workaholism still receives a great deal of support in our society. The phrase, I'm working, has a certain unassailable air of goodness and duty to it. The truth is, we are very often working to avoid ourselves, our spouses, our real feelings. In creative recovery, it is far easier to get people to do the extra work of the morning pages than it is to get them to do the assigned play of an artist date. Play can make a workaholic very nervous. Fun is scary. If I had more time, have more fun. We like to tell ourselves, but this is seldom the truth. To test the validity of this assertion, ask yourself how much time you allot each week to fun, pure, unadulterated, non-productive fun. For most blocked creatives, fun is something they avoid almost as assiduously as their creativity. Why? Fun leads to creativity. It leads to rebellion. It leads to feeling our own power, and that is scary. I may have a small problem with overwork. We like to tell ourselves, but I'm not really a workaholic. Try answering these questions before you are so sure. The workaholism.
One second. So very important to understand that what are we trying to recognize? Are we addicted to something? Is that workaholism? And of course, our society is such where this is absolutely a done deal. It's okay to be a workaholic. Now, in creative recovery, it is not okay to be a workaholic. Okay, that means we are to do the morning pages a bit more. And let's make them fun. Let's not just be so scared about what's going to happen. And when we start procrastinating, saying, oh, if I had time, I would have done this. If I had time, why can't I make time? Why am I stuck mentally that, no, I don't have time? Why can't I do everything that I want? It's just about scheduling. Why can't I do it? So for more block creative, we are going to be doing this workaholism quiz, and let's see how you and I fare. I'll take the quiz right here first, Sanya. So the workaholism quiz. First, let's hear what Cesar Chavez says. He says, when we are really honest with ourselves, we must admit our lives are all that really belong to us. So it is how we use our life that determines the kind of men we are. So don't take your life so seriously. Have some fun, very important. The first question is, which you have to answer today is, I work outside of office hours, seldom, often, never. So whatever works for you, if you want, you can get the quiz now also. You keep tick marking and seeing what answer I've written if you have a pen and paper. The first question is, I work outside of office hours, seldom, often, never. Choose your answer. Number two, I cancel dates with loved ones, do more work, seldom, often, never. I postpone outings until the deadline is over, seldom, often, never. I take work with me on weekends, seldom, often, never. I take work with me on vacations, seldom, often, never. I take vacations, seldom, often, never. My intimates complain I always work, seldom, often, never. I try to do two things at once, seldom, often, never. I allow myself free time between projects, seldom, often, never. So please understand one thing, the number 8. If you were multitasking before and are not doing it presently, the present thing will matter, not what you were doing a month and a half ago. So if you've had a transformation already, great. So please answer only what is thing now. I allow myself free time between projects. So we've read this, seldom, often, ever. I allow myself to achieve closure on tasks. Some people just can't seem to close it. They're just at it, perfect karna hai, or perfect karna hai, or perfect. There has to be some drawing line, right? So that's the question for this. I procrastinate in finding up the last loose ends. खोजते रहते हैं कि, oh, what is it? What is it? What is it? So again, seldom, often, never. I set out to do one job and start on 3 more at the same time. So it's very important that we concentrate on one good thing and give it all our attention rather than creating many, many, many things on side. So that's what the question is. I work in the evenings during family time. There are people, so now what's work? If you are spending time on your mobile phone or laptop and you're saying, I'm not working, I'm just browsing on the internet per se, even that is work because you're not in the evenings present mentally during the family time. Physically, you're seated, mentally, you're just somewhere out. So even if mobile addiction is there, that's also working. I allow calls to interrupt and lengthen my work day, seldom, often, never. I prioritize my day to include an hour of creative work, play, seldom, often, never. I place my creative dreams before my work, seldom, often, never. I fall in love with others' plans and fill my free time with their agendas, seldom, often, never. So again, doing things for others in your free time, and just what you want to get wawahi or whatever. Are you that kind of person? So I allow myself downtime to do nothing. So if that's happening, seldom, often, never. I use the word deadline to describe and rationalize my workload. Seldom, often, never. Going somewhere, even to dinner, with a notebook or my work numbers isn't something I do. Seldom, often, never. So let's understand we're supposed to take this quiz. Now what's going to happen after this quiz that we get answered in the next bit. Sanya, you can continue.
In order to recover our creativity, we must learn to see workaholism as a block instead of a building block. Work abuse creates in our artist a Cinderella complex. We are always dreaming of the ball and always experiencing the ball and chain. There is a difference between zestful work toward a cherished goal and workaholism. That difference lies less in the hours than it does in the emotional quality of the hours spent. There is a treadmill quality to workaholism. We depend on our addiction and we resent it. For a workaholic, work is synonymous with worth, and so we are hesitant to jettison any part of it. In striving to clear the way for our creative flow, we must look at our work habits very clearly. We may not think we overwork until we look at the hours we put in. We may think our work is normal until we compare it with the normal 40-hour week. One way to achieve clarity about our time expenditures is to keep a daily checklist and record of our time spent. Even an hour of creative work or play can go a long way toward offsetting the sense of workaholic desperation that keeps our dreams at bay. Because workaholism is a process, an addiction to a behavior rather than a substance, it is difficult to tell when we are indulging in it. An alcoholic gets sober by abstaining from alcohol. A workaholic gets sober by abstaining from overwork. The trick is to define overwork. And this is where we often lie to ourselves, bargaining to hold on to those abusive behaviors that still serve us. In order to guard against rationalization, it is very useful to set a bottom line. Each person's bottom line is different, but should specifically mention those behaviors known to be off limits. These specific behaviors make for more immediate recovery than a vague, generic resolve to do better. If you really have no time, you need to make some room. It is more likely, however, that you have the time and you are misspending it. Your time log will help you find those areas where you need to create boundaries. Boundary is another way to say bottom line. Bottom line, I will not. That is your boundary. See setting a bottom line in this week's list of tasks. As with creative U-turns, recovery from workaholism may require that we enlist the help of our friends. Tell them what you are trying to accomplish. Ask them to remind you gently when you have strayed off your self-care course. This will backfire if you enlist the help of people who are active workaholics themselves or who are so controlling that they will over-control you. Bear in mind, however, that this is your problem. No one can police you into the recovery, but in some parts of the country, workaholics anonymous meetings are springing up, and these may help you enormously. One very simple but effective way to check your own recovery progress is to post a sign in your work area. Also post this sign wherever you will read it. One on the bathroom mirror and one on the refrigerator, one on the nightstand, one in the car. The sign reads, "Workaholism is a block, not a building block."
Okay, so the way she's done workaholism is a block, not a building block. You can always write your affirmation, which you believe in, right? Rather than writing negative stuff or a reminder. This is actually a reminder, but you can also write an affirmation that I flow with life and I have all the time in the world for doing whatever I want. So then automatically you'll start getting conditioned to making time for not only things that you love, for the creative hour, or even for so many more things, you'll become so much more better. So let's strive to have the creative flow, the creative juices coming out. Now, if we are spending too much of time at a work front and it's not even concrete, 99% we are multitasking and not focused on one thing, and the growth will be stagnant or it will be downhill. We'll never be able to go up. Now, the best way to do this is journaling, where you're maintaining what you're doing throughout the day so that you have a mindful check. Oh, I've been doing this. I've been doing this. I've been doing this. Get this very, very, very clearly that each one of us can change and do whatever we want in a nice fashion by simply trying to, so again, accountability. We've also talked about having your Sangha, and this again, they've come, that have accountability partners. So if you're choosing to have a Sangha from your, yes, very much, when your work is your Ikigai, when your work is your Ikigai, even then, Sakshi, there's nothing called going overboard. You have to have time for yourself, right? So you can't just go around the curtain and say, oh, but I love my work. I don't even know, I just flow in time. Okay, great, you do that. It's fantastic. What about your other things? What about your other things? I mean, is work the only thing that brings you happiness? I mean, something else. So please understand, there's a time for creative U-turns. It's a time to recover. So even your love, your passion is also you're becoming workaholic. So of course, nobody can police each other. We spoke about this yesterday. Let everyone find out themselves. Let them find out where they stand, how they stand. It's not going to be, let's start paraphrasing. Yesterday, we were talking about two beautiful facts. One is like coaching, and the other is like, just logotherapy and psychoanalysis, right? So please just be a listener. That's it. Let the person and just be a listener and repeat out what he or she has said. That's what we did yesterday. So please be very, very careful that workaholism does not overtake your life and does not make you into a dead sheep. So very important for each one of us to draw our own boundaries, rationalize ourselves. Now we'll talk about drought.
In any creative life, there are dry seasons. These droughts appear from nowhere and stretch to the horizon like a Death Valley vista. Life loses its sweetness. Our work feels mechanical, empty, forced. We feel we have nothing to say, and we are tempted to say nothing. These are the times when the morning pages are most difficult and most valuable.
And these are times when we must do these morning pages, come what may. So whether you're feeling challenged, emotionally done, just do it. Very important for all of us to realize that we must adhere to it. And the last page, Plato says, the life which is not examined is not worth living. So we must examine our life. We must take a reality check. What are our dreams? Where have I reached? What was the action? Have I taken it? Or have I allowed my laziness to get over me? Or is there a mental block? Now, even during a drought, let's understand that we are having emotional drought. We're not being able to create something, even though we've been born creative, because you're now going into a death valley. So understand that we have to get out of it by starting to experience our life, by starting to analyze our life and starting to write the morning pages once again. Let's continue.
During a drought, a mere act of showing up on the page, like the act of walking through a trackless desert, requires one football after another to no apparent point. Doubts sidle up to us like sidewinders. What's the use? They hiss. Or what do you expect? Droughts tell us that they will last forever and that we will not. A haunting anticipation of our own death, approaching long before we are ready for it, long before we've done anything of value, shimmers ahead of us like a ghastly mirage. What do? We stumble on. How do we do that? We stay on the morning pages. This is not a rule for writers only. The pages have nothing to do with writing, although they may facilitate as they do all art forms. For all creative beings, the morning pages are the lifeline, the trail we explore, and the trail home to ourselves. During a drought, the morning pages seem both painful and foolish. They feel like empty gestures, like making breakfast for the lover we know is leaving us anyhow. Hoping against hope that we will someday be creative again, we go through the motions. Our consciousness is parched. We cannot feel so much as a trickle of grace. During a drought, during a doubt, I just accurately wrote with the slip of the finger. We are fighting with God. We have lost faith in the great creator and in our creative selves. We have some bone to pick, and bones to pick are everywhere. This is the desert of the heart. Looking for a hopeful sign, all we see are the hulking remains of dreams that died along the path.
Very important to understand, whenever you're feeling foolish, whenever you're feeling painful, whenever there's emptiness, whenever there's some kind of a doubt, please, please, please just go and write those pages. Now, they don't have to be necessary at this stage in the morning. Morning is the best time for it. But if you have to settle scores with somebody, if you're planning to like just go for it, don't do that. Just start getting hopeful with yourself and start writing your morning pages. Yes, please.
And yet we write our morning pages because we must. During a drought, emotions are dried up. Like water, they may exist somewhere underneath, but we have no access to them. A drought is like a tearless time of grief. We are between dreams, too listless to even know our losses. We put one page after another, more from habit than hope. And yet we write our morning pages because we must. Droughts are terrible. Droughts hurt. Droughts are long, airless, seasons of doubt that make us grow, give us compassion, and blossom as unexpectedly as the desert with sudden flowers. Droughts do end. Droughts end because we have kept writing our pages. They end because we have not collapsed to the floor of our despair and refused to move. We have doubted, yes, but we have stumbled on. In a creative life, droughts are a necessity. The time in the desert brings us clarity and charity. When you are in a drought, know that it is to a purpose and keep writing morning pages. To write is to write things. Sooner or later, always later than we like, our pages will bring things right. A path will emerge. An insight will be a landmark that shows the way out of the wilderness. Dancer, sculptor, actor, painter, playwright, poet, performance artist, potter, artist, all. The morning pages are both our wilderness and our trail.
So very important, morning pages are like the guiding light, whether you and I realize it or not, but it's going to open so many channels and doors to success. That's unbelievable. Just start writing. So Jalaluddin Rumi, he says, sell your cleverness and buy bewilderment. So what do we have to do with this? Just don't think too much. Just go wild. Just start living life. Just start think. Don't think so much. Now, again, what is being talked about here is very, very beautiful. Droughts do end. Droughts end because we have kept writing our pages. So please continue to write your pages. If you haven't, start writing them. And if you are, then make them longer, because that is what your soul needs. And that is what God has created this. And don't fight with him. So now yes, please.
Fame. Fame encourages us to believe that if it hasn't happened yet, it won't happen. Of course, it is fame. Fame is not the same as success. And in our true souls, we know that. We know and have felt success at the end of a good day's work. But fame, it is addictive and it always leaves us hungry. Fame is a spiritual drug. It is often a byproduct of our artistic work. But like nuclear waste, it can be very dangerous. It can be a very dangerous byproduct. Fame, the desire to attain it, the desire to hold on to it, can produce the how am I doing syndrome. This question is not, is the work going well? This question is, how does it look to them? The point of work is the work. The fame interferes with that perception. Instead of being about acting, it becomes about being a famous actor. Instead of writing, being about writing, it becomes about being recognized, not just published. We all like credit, where credit is due. As artists, we don't always get it. Yes, focusing on fame, on whether we are getting enough, creates a continual feeling of lack. There's never enough of the fame drug. Wanting more will always snap at our heels, discredit our accomplishments, erode our joy at another's accomplishment.
Oh, wonderful. So let's understand, we're looking at validification. We're looking at people acknowledging us, thanking us. And now that is also something you're looking to become famous, or all the time acknowledgement. And then that's going to interfere with our perception. We'll think, oh, I'm to do it all. And sometimes when people don't understand your perspective, it's all right to do that. But if by and large that's happening to you, then think about it, recognize it, start writing, start understanding, and don't take credit where it's not due. Not everything has to be I, me, and am. Let others focus on it. Let others expand it. Let there be a feeling of love and not of lack. It's very important to get back on track. Now, that's the one beauty that all of us can. Wanting more will always snap at our heels, discredit our accomplishments, erode our joy in others' accomplishment. So when somebody accomplishes something, even though he's a competitor or a co-sister or somebody, celebrate that. You may not want to show it physically, but feel that good feeling, because it's very important for you to resonate at that vibration to be able to go on that vibration. If you have vibration of, oh shit, oh guilt, or anything which is Envy, jealousy, you will never be able to manifest your dreams because you will be resonating with envy and jealousy much, much more. So in fact, you're doing that person a favor by feeling jealous because he or she will be prospering so much more better in whichever part they're working. So Meister Eckhart says, truly it is in the darkness that one finds the light. So when we are in sorrow, then this light is nearest of all of us. That's why they say knocks and shocks of life prepare you for a spiritual journey. And to those of you who haven't had knocks and shocks and still in session and are transforming, believe me, count your blessings. You're really the lucky lot. Adrienne Rich says, the unconscious wants truth. It ceases to speak to those who want something else more than truth. So now what's happening? Your subconscious mind is feeding you the truth, but you don't want it, you're discarding it. You want something more. So it'll stop working for you. Very, very, very important to understand that. Yes, let's turn the page.
To test this, read any of the many fan magazines, People, for instance, and see if it afterward your life somehow feels more shabby, less worthwhile. This is the fame drug at work. Remember, treating yourself like a precious object will make you strong. When you have been toxified by the fame drug, you need to detox by coddling yourself. What's in order here is a great deal of gentleness and some behavior that makes you like yourself. Sending postcards is a great trick. Mail one to yourself that says, you are doing great. It's very nice to get fan letters from ourselves. In the long run, fan letters from ourselves and our creative self are what we are really after. Fame is really a shortcut for self approval. Try approving of yourself just as you are and spoiling yourself rotten with these small kids' pleasures. What we are really scared of is that without fame, we won't be loved, as artists or as people. The solution to this fear is concrete, small, loving actions. We must actively, consciously, consistently, and creatively nurture our artist selves. When the fame drug hits, go to your easel, your typewriter, your camera, or clay. Pick up the tools of your work and begin to do just a little creative play. Soon, very soon, the fame drug should start to lessen its hold. The only cure for the fame drug is creative endeavor. Only when we are being joyfully creative, we can release the obsession with others and how they are doing.
So very important to understand this, that we must treat ourselves very preciously. That, I'm a queen, or maybe I'm so pretty, or, I'm so handsome. And now we've been told to, if you haven't toxified by this fame drug, you need to, you want fame, you want fame, you want fame. That means there's lack of love, right? That's why you're looking out to have something right there. So what do you need to detox? How? By coddling yourself, by giving yourself so much of love, protecting yourself, talking to yourself well. You don't need people to coddle you. Why can't you become indulgent for yourself? Why can't you indulge in something that you love? So, and of course, writing to yourself, oh, you're doing great. Acknowledging yourself is really wonderful. And if you have a Sangha, they're there to acknowledge you. Just say, I'm going through this and let's go for it. So we are here in this journey. We're processing information because we want to grow out of this, really. So that's what is very, very, very important. You should be able to then pick up your, pick your life up, especially if you're writing the morning pages. Nurture yourself creatively, whatever makes you happy, indulge in it. Go on the artist state, because that is kind of a therapy which is very important in this journey of ours. So very, very important to start doing it. J. Krishnamurti says, real learning comes about when the competitive spirit has ceased. Isn't that beautiful? Now there are two jewelers per se. Anju and Ajay is one, and Prachi Prashanta one. Why can't the four of us be best friends even in the same business, contemporary jewelry, or say, ancestral jewelry, like, heritage jewelry? Why does one company have to do better than the other? Why can't we? Hey, you're doing great. Imagine what's going to happen. You're complimenting your competitor. You're attracting those vibes of doing so well. Like, hey, shit, he's got such good stuff, man. Amazing. Look at his clients. He's doing so well. That's what's going to happen. I'm going to make his clients keep coming up because my jealousy is working for him. So competition is healthy when you start nurturing it with love, when you start acknowledging, applauding. Once in a while, call them up also, say, hey, Praj, you're doing so well. So proud of you, amazing. And not like, so please understand. We are people who are really scared. The inner child in us is really scared. We want to be told, oh, are you loved? Oh, you're this, oh, you're that, because we are not safe. So please allow yourself consciously, consistently to creatively nurture yourself. That's very, 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 very important. So understand that whatever makes you happy, unleash those creative juices, whatever makes you happy. Now we'll talk about competition. Very beautiful thing to talk about competition because it's very, very important. Yes.
You pick up a magazine or even your alumni news, and somebody you know has gone further, faster toward your dream. Instead of saying that proves it can be done, your fear will say he or she will succeed instead of me. Competition is another spiritual drug. When we focus on competition, we poison our own well, impede our own progress. When we are ogling the accomplishments of others, we take our eye away from our own true line. We ask ourselves the wrong questions, and those wrong questions give us the wrong answers. Why do I have such rotten luck? Why did he get his movie, article, or play out before I got mine out? Is it because of sexism? What's the use? What do I have to offer? We often ask these questions as we try to talk ourselves out of creating. Questions like these allow us to ignore more useful questions. Did I work on my play today? Did I make the deadline to mail it off where it needed to go? Have I done any networking on its behalf? These are the real questions, and focusing on them can be hard for us. No wonder it is tempting to take the first emotional drink instead. No wonder so many of us read People magazine or the New York Times book review or Mirabella or Esquire and use them to wallow in a lot of unhealthy envy. We make excuses for our avoidance, excuses focused on others. Somebody else has probably said it, done it, thought it, and better. Besides, they had connections. A rich father, they belonged to a sought after minority. They slept where they way to the top.
Please understand, if magazines are doing this, that you're going into wallowing culture, don't bring them, don't subscribe them, don't see them. But if you can celebrate people and feel happy about them and be inspired, please go and do that. Because then that's beautiful. You're acknowledging, you're appreciating, and you're like, oh my God, look at that man. He's got this beautiful car I don't even have. And if you start saying like that, oh, look at his bungalow, oh, look at his farms, it's too much. Whereas the government, if you're like, wow, look at the way he's done himself, amazing, more power to him. Then what are you doing? You're adding power to yourself. So please do not start giving, excuses by saying, अरे वो तो रईस बाप का बेटा है, अरे उसके पास तो बहुत कुछ, अरे उन लोग तो लकी हैं, उससे ज्यादा कुछ नहीं करा. And then when women become, very prominent in society, especially in the Bollywood world, they just say, oh, she slept her way up to the top, or, secretary has gone up. What is all this? Do you really know? Okay, people have put it like there is a casting couch. Why are you being so judgy? People could have gone up on their own, right? So yes, some people who are privileged don't have to sleep their way up. Some are not. Even they somehow manage. Why do we always have to think negative? So again, I'm saying why I brought in that here is because they talked about sleeping in way, and we all know that we've been victims of thinking that ourselves. So now it's the time to release that thought about it. Competition lies at the root of much creative blockage. As artists, we must go within. We must attend to what it is, our inner guidance. What is it nudging us towards? We can't afford to worry about what is not. If it's too early or late for a piece of work, its time will come again. Remember, everything has a reason. Like I began a beautiful small canvas for Prashant, like, what, for his birthday. They're absolute magical stuff. And I was like, this is who he is. I worked on it for 4 hours a night and I was like sleeping. I barely slept in the last so many days. And then I realized it came out lousy. So I was like, okay, forget it. I will redo a paint layer on it. And I said, okay, at birthday pe nahi diya, doesn't matter. Apna application aa jayega. So it's okay when things go wrong. It's okay when your inner guidance is guiding you and if saying it's fine, try to listen to it. Sabka time aata hai. It's okay. Not everything has to be perfect. In fact, perfection is also a myth. So yeah, Sanya, let's continue.
As artists, we cannot afford to think about who is getting ahead of us and how they don't deserve it. The desire to be better than can choke off the simple desire to be. As artists, we cannot afford this thinking. It leads us away from our own voices and choices and into a defensive game that centers outside of ourselves and our sphere of influence. It asks us to define our own creativity in terms of someone else's. This compare and contrast school of thinking may have its place for critics, but not for artists in the act of creation. Let the critics spot trends. Let reviewers concern themselves with what is in and what is not. Let us concern ourselves first and foremost with what it is within us that is struggling to be born. When we compete with others, when we focus our creative concerns on the marketplace, we are really jostling with other artists in a creative foot race. This is the sprint mentality. Looking for a short term win, ignoring the long term gain, we short circuit the possibility of a creative life led by our own lights, not the plague lights of fashion. Whenever you are angered about someone else beating you out, remember this. The foot race mentality is always the ego's demand to be not just good, but also first and best. It is the ego's demand that our work be totally original, as if such a thing were possible. All work is influenced by other work. All people are influenced by other people. No man in an island and no piece of art is a continent unto itself. When we respond to art, we are responding to its resonance in terms of our own experience. We seldom see anew in the sense of finding something utterly unfamiliar. Instead, we see an old in a new light. If the demand to be original still troubles you, remember this. If each of us is our own country, an interesting place to visit. It is the accurate mapping out of our own creative interests that invites the term original. We are the origin of our art, its homeland. Viewed this way, originality is the process of remaining true to ourselves. The spirit of competition, as opposed to the spirit of creation, often urges us to quickly winnow out whatever doesn't seem like a winning idea. This can be very dangerous. It can interfere with our ability to carry a project to term. A competitive focus encourages snap judgments, thumbs up or thumbs down. Does this project deserve to live? No, our ego will say, if it is looking for a fail-safe, for the fail-safe surefire project that is a winner at a glance and for good. Many hits are sure things only in retrospect. Until we know better, we call a great many creative swans ugly ducklings. This is the indignity we offer our brain children as they rear their heads in our consciousness. We judge them like beauty pageant contestants. In a glance, we may cut them down. We forget that not all babies are born beautiful. So we abort the lives of awkward and or unseemly projects, seemly projects that may be our finest work, our best creative ugly ducklings. An act of art needs time to mature. Judged early, it may be judged incorrectly. Never ever judge a fledgling piece of work too quickly. Be willing to paint or write badly while your ego yelps resistance. Your bad writing may be the syntactical breakdown necessary for a shift in your style. Your lousy painting may be pointing you in a new direction. Art needs time to incubate, to sprawl a little, to be ungainly and mishappen, and finally emerge as itself. The ego hates this fact. The ego wants instant gratification and the addictive hit of an acknowledged win. The need to win now is a need to win approval from others. As an antidote, we must learn to approve of ourselves. Showing up for the work is the win that matters.
How beautiful this all is. It's so amazing to know that all of us can view our life in a very different way, the way we have been viewing. If only we start complimenting ourselves, if only we start becoming our best, appreciators. I'm not going to say critics. No, we are anyways critics. What if we start listening to ourselves and appreciate ourselves? Oh, wow, you've done really well. What if we acknowledge that win? What if we acknowledge that victory where you've overcome some kind of a addiction? What if you start becoming creative and you just melt down all the negative? So even whatever you're doing, even your writing is making a shift in your life. Very important for all of us to know that the ego hates this thing about if we are allowing ourselves to become creative. The ego is hating it because you're just not, you're taking away attention from it. Then that was attention. What is ego? I, me, and am, right? It needs all the attention. Many kya. And ekdam se you're going to become creative, you'll not be egoistic because you're going to start flowing. So very important to understand that we must learn to approve of ourselves. And that is what is the $1 million fact in this particular chapter today. So Edgar Degas says, only when he no longer knows what he's doing does the painter do good things. So if you know what you're doing, you'll be, you don't know what's happening. Why do you think abstract art has become so famous? People find their own stories. I have made something with my perception. You will find your perception. That's what they resonate with. Lao Tzu says, he who knows others is wise. He who knows himself is enlightened. दूसरों को जानना is amazing, but खुद को जानना is most important. Brenda Ulen says, I will tell you what I have learned myself. For me, a long 5 or 6 mile walk helps. And one must go alone and every day. So मैं और मेरी बातें, मैं और मेरी thoughts on a nice walk is what Brenda Ullman is saying, that we should try it. If we do that, we'll be able to get a lot of clarity, because then it's just you. So, and if possible, without the phones. Of course, for some people it's very tough, but see what works for you. Today's tasks are very simple, very nice, very meaningful. So we're supposed to take a piece of paper. Now, what do? The deadlines. It's called the dead lies. Whatever is dead, whatever lies, we're just going to talk about that. Take a piece of paper, cut 7 small strips from it. On each strip, write one of the following words: alcohol, drugs, sex, work, money, food, family, and friends. Fold these strips of paper and place them in an envelope. We call these folded slips the dead lies. You'll see why in a minute. Now draw one of the dead lies from the envelope and write 5 ways in which it has a negative impact in your life. If you are the one who you choose something difficult or inapplicable, consider that, and then consider this resistance. So please, just be careful. You will do this 7 times, each time pulling out the previous slip, putting back the previous slip of paper. So you're always drawing from 7 possible choices. It could be the same again, okay? And yes, you may draw the same deadly repeatedly. Yes, this is significant. Very often it is the last impact on the final list of often annoying. Oh no, not again. That yields a break through denial into clarity. So if I like something and it comes and oh, wow, amazing. But if I'm like, fir aa gaya, which means that has to be sorted. Number 2, touchstones. Make a quick list of things you love. happiness touchstones for you, river rocks worn smooth, willow trees, cornflowers, chicory, real Italian bread, homemade vegetable soup, the Dean's music, black beans and rice, the smell of new mown grass, blue velvet, the cloth and the song, Aunt Minnie's crumb pie. Post this list where it can console you and recommend you of your own personal touchstones. You may want to draw one of the items on your list. So if you want to draw it, that's fine. You want to acquire it, acquire it. If you love blue velvet, get a remnant to use as runner or a sideboard or dresser, or tack it on the wall and mount images on it. Why? Because you love it. So use it somehow, however you want. Become a little creative, play a little. Understand that whatever you're doing is you're pampering yourself. The awful truth, number 3. Answer the following questions. Tell the truth. What habit do you have that gets in the way of your creativity? Tell the truth. What do you think that might be a problem? It is. What do you plan to do about the habit or problem? What is your payoff in holding on to this block? If you can't figure out your payoff, ask a trusted friend. Tell the truth. Which friends make you doubt yourself? The self-doubt is yours already, but they trigger it. Tell the truth. Which friends believe in you and your talent? The talent is yours, but they make you feel it. What is the payoff in keeping your destructive friends? If the answer is, I like them, the next question is why? Just because they are rich, just because they're famous in society, just because they are happening? Keep company that gives you a lot of love, okay? That's why we say Sangha is important, because they will be always having your back. Which destructive habits do your destructive friends share with your destructive self? Imagine something they're ridiculing you again and again and again. It's going to go in your mind. And you don't want to subconsciously acquire that. You had that because you've heard it so many times. Now 4, setting a bottom line. Working with your answers to the question above, try setting a bottom line for yourself. Begin with 5 or your most painful behaviors. You can always add more later. If you notice that the evenings are typically gobbled by your boss's extra assignments, then a rule must come into play. No work after 6, and then nobody can, make you work. If you wake up at 6 and could write for an hour, if you're not interrupted, look for socks and make breakfast and do ironing, the rules might be no interrupting mommy before 7 a.m. If you're working too many jobs and too many hours, you may need to look at your billing. Are you pricing yourself appropriately? Do some footwork. What are of others in this field receiving? Raise your prices and lower your workload. So Pyro Ferrucci says, how often, even before we began, have we declared a task impossible? And how often have we construed a picture of ourselves as being inadequate? A great deal depends upon the thoughts, patterns we choose, and the persistence which we affirm them. So very important to start seeing what are we affirming, what are we choosing. It's very important to see where you're heading for. Somerset Maugham says, it's a funny thing about life. If you refuse to accept anything but the best, you very often get it. So go for the best, na? Kisne mana kiya? Dream big, think big, and achieve it. Because that's what is going to come your way. Now for the bottom line, Tanya, please read.
I will no longer work weekends. I will no longer bring work with me on social occasions. I will no longer place my work before my creative commitments. No more canceling piano lessons or drawing classes because of a sudden new deadline from my boss, the workaholic. I will no longer postpone lovemaking to do late night reading for work. I will no longer accept business calls at home after 6.
Okay, so now we've learned in Louis Hay's book not to use these words, I will know, right? So what will we say instead? I have fun in the weekends. You can always say it. I leave my work back at office and on social occasions. My family and my other commitments are a priority. So we can start saying positive stuff rather than saying I will no longer. Rest completely up to you. Number 5 is cherishing. Cherishing what? 5 small victories. Chota 5 cheezeं cherish karna hai. 3 nurturing actions you took for your art list, for your artist. क्या किया आपने, कैसे नर्चर किया. फॉर एग्जाम्पल जितेंद्र जी ने एक बार फोटोग्राफी शुरू करी थी, so वो nurturing action था उनको. He, when somebody said okay it could be ikigai, he got excited, he posted again. So just get this very small little things. 3 actions you could take to comfort your artist. क्या कर सकते हैं to make your artist grow. 4, make 3 nice promises to yourself, keep them. 3 promise करिए अपने साथ, जो भी करें keep them small so you don't break them, and when you achieve them acknowledge them, applaud them. Number 5, do one lovely thing for yourself each day this week. कुछ अच्छा एक करना एक day, have you done or not? Very important. Now next page is about check-ins. So what are we going to check in? That, you know, have we gone on an artist date last week? How many, sir, you can change the page. How many times have you done the morning pages? And if you have not done, why have you not done? So number 2, did you do your artist date this week? Let yourself do an extra one. What did you do? How did it feel? Start chronicling, start journaling. Did you experience any synchronicity this week? So for me, synchronicities are really happening, really in a big way happening. I will share them with you people, I think today on the group, and what's been keeping me creative and what's been keeping me happy and energized, and so many synchronicities just because the blockages are opening. Yeah, the more and more are opening. Number 4, were there any other issues this week that you consider insignificant for your recovery? Describe them. So if there are any issues, high time you start describing them. Thank you so much, Rahul sir, for showcasing this book. And thank you, Sania, for reading so beautifully for all of us. Thank you for being an avid reader and picking up the thread whenever we lose it. So thank you. This is simple. Day to day is not a tough day in artist way at all. It's just about the commitment. So if you really want to do it, you can do it. 2 more weeks to go. So, and if you haven't done the past, it's okay. Today is always a new day. Start today's chapter. It's not a big deal. Kahin na kahin blockage to khulegi. That's for sure. Sir, we can have the heart thought, please. So very important to see that we all are growing in life for a purpose, with purpose. And let's see today what heart thought is coming. So what do we have to meditate on? Wow. Amazing. But this is what we actually did in the artist way also, right? That I always have a choice. So very important, the shoulds. Should, could, would is such a limiting thing. But you have a choice. I can do whatever I want. Can do, and I is so much more better, right? So don't make yourself so stuck. Choose to believe that it is easy to change a thought or pattern. Now, for example, yesterday, if I said, oh, I can't do it, or I'm trying. Okay, good that you're saying trying is better than saying I can't do it. First case, somebody saying I can't do it. Second case, she or he is trying. So the third case is the person says, yeah, I have this issue, but I know I can change it. It's all about thinking and I can do it. So that is what we're supposed to choose. I always have choice. Does anyone want to read this chapter today? This section, anybody, please raise your hand. Asmeet raised, yes. Yes, please. Okay, Jitendra ji, please come read.
I always have choice. Most of us have foolish ideas about who we are and many rigid rules about how life should be lived. Let us remove the word should from our vocabulary forever. Should is a word that makes a prisoner of us. Every time we use should, we are making ourselves wrong, or we are making someone else wrong. We are in effect saying not good enough. What can be dropped now from your should list? Replace the word should with the word could. Could lets you know that you have choice, and choice is freedom. We need to be aware that everything we do in life is done by choice. There is really nothing that we have to do. We always have choice.
How wonderful. Thank you, Jitendra ji. So this chapter is very clear about should is going to make us prisoner. Could is having a choice. I anyways differ with this also. I feel should, could, would is there. Yeah, great. But I have a choice. I simply choose. Why should I be doing shoulds or coulds and woulds? If I just know I want to follow something, I'll do it. Why should I keep procrastinating about should, could, would? Then I'm just in some kind of a pattern. So yeah, thank you so much for reading. Thank you for showcasing. And today let's meditate on something beautiful. I'm not going to talk about should, could, would. It didn't resonate with me too much. So anybody, any thought that you want to meditate on? If yes, please use the chat box and let me know. We can meditate on that. Otherwise, I'm happy to meditate on whatever comes. Okay, back straight. Thank you, Richa. We'll meditate on this. Beautiful. Our feet firmly placed on the ground below. Our hands comfortably placed on our laps, facing heaven upwards if possible. A soft smile on our faces. Let's take a deep breath in and fill our body with love. Feel the love pulsating in every part of your body, every cell of your body. As you exhale, share the love with the world. Inhale light. Fill your body with a lot of light. The world's bright. As you exhale, share the light with the world. Dispel the darkness outside. Remember, every step counts, so make it count. Life is a giver. Life is beautiful. Life is about happiness. Let's choose happiness, knowing we deserve it. We have earned it. We only get the best because we believe we deserve the best. Our feelings towards ourselves have changed. Now we speak to ourselves, we smile. Now we're happy with the way we are. And the way we are, the minute we're happy, everything goes for a shift. Things become better. Life elevates itself to a new tangent, a new dimension. And we all become better and better and better. Let's all accept this. Let's all accept the very idea of growing in love, growing in light, growing in happiness. Let everyone know that it's all about finding ourselves. The deeper we go in, the stronger we emerge. Let's now indulge in some silence every day and meditating in that silence. Simple, quiet meditation, just observing your breath. No music, nothing. Just see how wonderfully life unfolds. We are believers in the world of happiness. We are believers that whatever comes to us comes for a reason, a very profound reason. We trust the process of life. We don't keep saying something or the other all the time to ourselves or to others. We kind of shush up because it's very important to be silent. Silence is one golden virtue. So is whatever that makes you happy. Let's do something for the soul because that is eternal happiness. Let's understand our body. Let's understand our life. Let's create our dreams. Let's choose wisely. Let's know we can create our life the way we desire. And so it is. Let's bend our heads towards Mother Earth, Jani Janmabhoomi. Today, invite three virtues, which we already have, but more of it: love, light, and the virtue for the day, happiness. I am happy. I am joyful. And I am always having a good time. Today, I take this up and I let myself know that I deserve it. I most definitely deserve it. And this is how it is. Let's now thank our life. Look at the eye level. Dear life, whatever I have lived, experienced, thank you for that. I may not have realized the importance of it, but now I do. My soul needed that, so it came to me. If I'm irritated, I'm snappy, I'm trying to get out of it because I've said something wrong, that means I need to fix that. And how do I fix that? I start indulging in the morning pages. Rather than ridiculing, criticizing, and labeling people, let me do the morning pages. Because I am strong. I'm no longer deterred by anything negative. Because I am strong. So it is. Life is beautiful. Life is lovely. Life is truly a gift. Let's embrace it. Let's live it. Now let's expand our angel hearts. Dear universe, thank you for having my back. Dear life, thank you for having my back. Dear divinities, thank you for showering each one of us with choices of blessings. Dear angels, thank you for showing up. Dear guardians, thank you for ensuring we are always safe and sound. Dear cosmos, thank you for including us in your divine Leela. We love this cosmic dance. Now let's expand the angel heart. I am love. I am light. I shine bright. Right now, right here. Whatever I need, I get. How wonderful. How wonderful. Now let's fold our hands and thank everything between universe to earth below. Rub your hands together. Feel the energy. Bless your conscious, subconscious. Thank you for restructuring, reprogramming, unlearning, and learning. Bless your face, your eyes, your ears, your nose, your mouth. Bless your neck. Bless your food pipe, the spiritual food inside. Shoulders that are light now, no excess weight. Hands which are beautiful, which are helping you all the time. Upper back, middle back, lower back, hips, chest, lungs, heart, liver, stomach, intestines, gallbladder, kidney, uterus, sexual organs, excretory organs, thighs, knees, calves, soles, and the soul and the roots that are growing in Mother Earth. Let's come back up. Once again, fold our hands and thank our body for working on its optimum best. Dear body, whatever you don't require, please discard it, detox it, emotions, feelings, whatever. Emerge as the best version of yourself because now I believe you are divinely intelligent and you're guided. So who am I to keep following you, flowing? Let you emerge strong just by being yourself. So it is. Let's invoke the energy that flows in us and bless our loved ones, our Sangha, their loved ones, and all beings in Mother Earth. Love, light, and blessings, Prashant, Prachi, Kripa, Sanya, Rigu, Naveen, Gyanji, Ushaji, Ajay, Anju, Seema, Mudita, Parul, Shruti, Nitika, Shelly, Alona, Sailesh, Anika, Nisha, Ankur, Prachidivan, Harpreet, Anchal, Akshay, Parul, Sakshi Sureka, Pratima Ji, Vandana, Shami and Ankur, Saisha, Sakshi, Hina, Shubhra, Reena, Asmeet, Mom, Neetu, Rima, Richa, Radhika, Peena, Sunita, Radhika, Gaya, Rohini Choksi, Shalu, Alifya, Minakshi, Chandra, Raviji, Poonam, Shivani, Kuldeep Ji, 1121 for life, Archana, Richa Juria, Kavita, whoever is, and if I didn't take somebody's name, Sunita maybe. Lots of love and light to each one of you. Is there anything anyone wants to share? So I was just thinking we are coming in the last leg of our curriculum, our entire program. If there's something you want to share any day, like a reflection, a testimonial about your journey, you can start sharing now. You want to do it later, even that's fine. Whatever works for you. So, and if there are any questions about anything or the doubts even now, please feel free to ask. It's not like you can't ask. Just remember one thing, we can ask whatever we want simply because we are in this process of being together. So it's great that you don't have to share anything. It's fine. It's absolutely good. So yes, Rohini, please ask.
गुड मॉर्निंग, नमस्ते। हमारी फार्म रिलेटेड एक बहुत 1.5-2 साल से एक प्रॉब्लम आ रही थी। जरा एक डॉक्यूमेंट रजिस्टर होने में प्रॉब्लम हो रही थी एंड उसका लॉक नहीं ओपन हो रहा था। सो अब 2-3 दिन से मैं गई थी वहां पे। कल मतलब हमारे एडवोकेट से ये काम नहीं हो रहा था। कल मैं डायरेक्टली जाके वो क्लास 1 ऑफिसर से मिली और उसके पहले मैंने थैंक यू बहुत तहे दिल से बोला एंड जस्ट उसने कुछ भी आर्गुमेंट नहीं किए और जस्ट ओपन किया कि वंडर, वो हमारे एडवोकेट को वंडर लगा कि इतने इजीली कैसे आप आए। फर्स्ट टाइम उससे मीटिंग हुई, फर्स्ट टाइम मिले और ये काम इतना इजीली पार हो गया। थैंक यू टू आपकी अपने बॉन्ड की और आपकी पावर हमें मिल रही है और मेरे बहुत सारे टास्क कंप्लीट हो रहे हैं एंड आई एम वेरी वेरी हैप्पी। मतलब मुझे मेरे फील्ड में, योगा के फील्ड में भी बहुत अचीवमेंट मिल रही है और आगे बहुत ब्राइट फ्यूचर एंड अबांडेंस दिख रहा है और इसकी शुरुआत तो हो ही गई है आपसे जब ज्वाइन हुई हूँ। थैंक यू टू अगेन यू प्राची मैम। ये सब आपका मैजिक है। आप हमारे जीवन में एक ध्रुव तारा जैसे आए हो, हमें दिशा दिखा रहे हो और मतलब इट्स स्पीचलेस। मतलब हर एक टास्क हमारे पूरे हो रहे हैं, हर एक मंजिल के तरफ जाने के वे खुल रहे हैं और सब में सक्सेस मिल रहा है। थैंक यू टू यू। थैंक यू।
Thank you so much. How wonderful. Yes, Sakshi, please. Yes, please.
Yeah. Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
So my question is, I have a question regarding the liver detox, which I believe we're all planning to do this weekend. So my question is that in between the drinks, like the Epsom salt and the oil and everything, it's a very small question. So is it okay to drink water in between if you feel like? Because I believe a diarrhea will be sort of induced. So it's okay to drink plain water.
If your body wants something, please give it. Not food, but water. You're not supposed to eat. Lunch is the last meal you're having now at 2 o'clock. Uske baad 6 o'clock you start your program, right? So and hours depend upon you. Like if you want to sleep early, you want to start earlier, do that. That's okay. Keep the gapping pretty much there. The science is there. Anyways, Karishma will be sharing with all of us detail if you want. Otherwise, fair enough. You've understood the science, you can do it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, my dear. Thank you so much. So thank you, everyone. Let's meet each other tomorrow at 5 o'clock. Same time, same place. Lots of love, light, and abundance. Thank you. Thank you, Rahul sir. Thank you so much, Ritesh sir, for still guiding us. Sanjay sir, Amrita, and Ashweta. Thank you so much.